Dave, I definitely want to talk about your article on Sam Pittman, this Arkansas-Missouri game, but I want to ask you first about this place called Chevys. Now, I think it's since closed down, but Sam Pittman has talked about that a couple times since he was in Columbia, and that apparently was his favorite place to go eat. Did you get a chance to go there and eat? Can you tell us about that place a little bit?
Yeah, Columbia has a lot of great restaurants. I was kind of surprised that was his place of choice. It's just a Mexican chain restaurant that they've got a few of them around the state. It was fine. I think it closed about 9-10 years ago. There's some good Mexican places in town. There's some great restaurants in Columbia, but that was his place of choice. They did have good chips and salsa, I'll give you that.
Well, Dave, I've only been to Columbia once, but I did get to partake, thanks to Bob Holt's recommendation, in Shakespeare's Pizza. And let me tell you something, that is spectacular. But I do want to talk Arkansas football with you. You wrote a really good piece on Sam Pittman, and you got a chance to talk to some of his former players. And one of the quotes that I thought stood out is, I wish I could say I'm surprised, but those guys at Arkansas are going to play their ass off for him, speaking to Sam Pittman. Dave, what did you learn from these players and different people you talked to about who Arkansas now has currently as their head football coach?
Well, I knew it back in 2000. I was covering Mizzou. I was right out of college, and Sam Pittman came in as the offensive line coach at Missouri. He was a lot younger then, and he didn't have the established background that he has now. And Missouri players, those linemen just absolutely loved him. They were really disappointed that Missouri made a head coaching change after that season, so he was gone. But those guys really liked him a lot. I think he was kind of perfect for what that team needed at the time. And A.J. Ricker is one of the players I talked to. He's been an offensive line coach since he got out of college. He's been all over. He's been at Missouri, Kansas, Illinois. Right now he's SMU's O-line coach. And he still keeps in touch with Sam all the time. Even though he only played 1 year for him, he learned a lot. And he said, really, Sam is the reason why he got into coaching. And he was thrilled for him when he got this job, as I'm sure a lot of O-line, career assistant position coaches were a year ago when Arkansas hired him, because it was kind of a victory for all of them. There's so many kind of coaching grunts, as I think how I described it, around the country that never get that shot. A lot of them never get a chance to even be a coordinator. So, Sam was a widely admired guy for his very short time at Mizzou, and those guys really love playing for him.
As you talk to the former players, and there always seems to be a common theme about that bond or the relationship or those conversations in the office. What were some of the common themes as you talked to former players preparing your article and doing your research that maybe stood out to you?
Oh, I think it's just Sam's personality. They played before Sam came in. The O-line coach at Missouri was Andy Moeller, who later went on and coached at Michigan. The son of the great Michigan coach, and he was fiery. I mean, he was hardcore, and it was like being in the military playing for him. Now they learned a lot from him, but Sam obviously came in with a much different demeanor and a different kind of tact and a tone with the players, and I think it was good for them. It's what they kind of needed, and that's just the guy that he is. I mean, my very brief time covering him, I remember this. Mm-hmm. Sam didn't shake your hand; he hugged you, even like the reporters back then, and that was just who he was. He just seemed like a real affable guy that was kind of a perfect fit for what that team needed. It was just a shame that they made the coaching change then, and he was part of the group that kind of got swept out of there.
Yeah, coaching changes are inevitable in this game, and one that occurred a year ago was Barry Odom leaving. Brad Davis was part of that staff. Sam Carter, you got others on this Arkansas staff that were part of Missouri. How big a factor, or what part of the understory of this game tomorrow between Arkansas and Missouri is that from the Missouri side, with Barry Odom coming in as the defensive coordinator for Arkansas? Is that much of the conversation this week from the Missouri side of it?
Yeah, it pretty much dominated the conversation. I think on two levels, really. One, you've got the X's and O's factor, kind of the intelligence gathering. And Barry knows 90% of Missouri's players. He recruited almost the entire roster except for the guys that they added back in February and some grad transfers. So he has the scouting report on these guys. And he also knows, Ryan Walters, Missouri's defensive coordinator, who was sort of, a guy that he brought up and promoted. So he has a good idea of what Missouri would run on defense. Not that he's going to coach against Missouri's defense, but that's stuff that he can, give over to Coach Briles and Arkansas staff. And then I think there's just the emotional attachment. I mean, Missouri players, it was not their choice to fire their head coach last year. They really love Barry, respect him a lot. The guys that stuck around, they're really behind Eli Drinkwitz. I mean, these players are bought in, they're on board, they've won 4 or 5. But you won't hear a bad word said about Barry and the job that he did recruiting these players and coaching them. So there was a lot of love thrown around this week from Missouri's players. Now, they want to go out and beat them. There's no doubt about that. But, there's still those emotional attachments there because that's just kind of the kind of coach he is. And, he builds those bonds with players, and those are still strong here in Columbia.
Dave Matter with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on the Morning Rush. And Dave, based on what you just said about Barry Odom, the connection between him and his former players, and now him facing off against not only his former team but his alma mater, how much does this game mean to him getting a win this weekend?
To Barry, I'm sure it means a lot. I mean, for one, Arkansas would like to get another win because they finished with Alabama next week, so you don't want to end the season, the regular season, on a 4-game losing streak. But I haven't talked to Barry in a while, but exchanged some messages with him during the season. But knowing him as long as I have, and I've known him for more than 20 years, there's nothing more that he wants than to get this win this weekend. Now, he loves those Missouri players. He's got guys from his staff, from his Missouri staff that are still coaching in Missouri that he's got a ton of respect for. But he's not going to be giving hugs out to Missouri's administration this week, the guys that fired him a year ago. There's no doubt about that. And he'll want nothing more than to walk out of Memorial Stadium with a victory. But it's personal to him, but I don't think he'll coach it during the game personally. This is not all about just personal vengeance for him. He still, I think, without talking to him about this directly, he still has a fondness for the school, the place, the town. He still has a lot of friends and supporters here in Columbia, but he'll want to get this win, no doubt.
And one of his former players, Nick Bolden, is having another what looks to be an all-SEC year. And I know there's been a lot of praise in Fayetteville towards Grant Morgan, Bumper Poole. Bolden's playing like one of the best linebackers in the SEC. How impactful is he going to be in the game tomorrow, Dave?
He's everywhere on the field for this team. He's really a special player. If you see a tackle in the backfield or a tackle near the line of scrimmage, you don't even have to wait to see who it was. It's always him. And he's a guy he does all the right things on the field, off the field. He's a leader of this team for sure. He's just a junior, but he's going to walk through the senior day ceremony before the game. And he hasn't made a formal decision yet, but they want to have a chance to honor him in case he does decide to enter the draft, which is the expectation around the program because he's projected as a first-round pick. But he's a really special player. I think he should be on ballot for SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if he'll get that. He doesn't play on one of the most high-profile teams. But if he had if he was an Alabama player or if he played for Florida or Georgia, he'd get that, no doubt. I would think he's that kind of player and has having that kind of year.
Dave, you bring up SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and we're speaking with Dave Matter. St. Louis Post-Dispatch covers the Tigers here on the Morning Rush. I know that the SEC Network came out earlier this week. I think it was Roman Harper that said that this game potentially decides the SEC Coach of the Year. In your opinion, do you think Eli Drinkwitz and Sam Pittman are really in contention for that award that is SEC Coach of the Year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I kind of describe this game more as an elimination game for that award, though, because if Missouri wins, I think Drinkwitz is still alive. If that happens, Sam still has to play Alabama. You're looking at a 4-6 or maybe 3-7 record for the Hogs, and I think it'd be kind of hard to give the award, Coach of the Year award, to a coach whose team is 3-7, and that doesn't say anything about the job that he has done this year, kind of reviving the program. It's been fantastic. But I just think some other candidates would jump out a little bit more. I mean, you still have to talk about Jimbo Fisher with the potential to go 9-1 at A&M, the job that Dan Mullen has done at Florida, and then Drinkwitz too. Although I think Eli probably has to win out to go 7-3 to really get enough votes to win that. And that would require a home win against Georgia, which is going to be hard. Missouri would be the underdog there for sure. But I just think taking the award out of it, you look at what these two first-year hires have done at these programs where things looked pretty grim a year ago, more grim at Arkansas for sure. they've turned out to be really fantastic hires, and I think both programs are in a better place than they were a year ago, no doubt.
Dave, we spent a lot of time this week having conversation about this air quotes rivalry game between Arkansas and Missouri. It doesn't feel like it's quite there to call a rivalry from our side of the fence. What's the feeling like when it comes to the term rivalry from Missouri's perspective? What's it like there on the ground in Columbia? Does anyone there consider this game a rivalry game?
I mean, it's getting there. It's not. The fact that we have to ask this every year proves that it's not, and it comes up every year, no doubt. The Missouri players are kind of tired of being asked about it because they don't have a choice in this. They weren't in the boardrooms, 8-9 years ago when Missouri left the Big 12 and gave up all of their natural rivals, Kansas and Kansas State was a good rival. Iowa State was a good game back and forth. Missouri had a great rivalry with Nebraska, and that's off the table. So Missouri plays a role in not having a natural rival because they left their. But this one does make sense. These things take time to happen. It's not going to happen overnight by any means. Proximity-wise, it makes sense. There is a history there between the programs. In basketball, especially, Norm Stewart had some great games against Arkansas over the years. It wasn't Arkansas basketball's favorite place to come play. No doubt. You had the Mike Anderson storyline for a while. I mean, he was a popular coach in Columbia and then was the most hated coach in the country by Missouri fans when he left for Arkansas. So there is stuff there that could make this good. The Barry Odom storyline is there, obviously. Drinkwitz is from the state of Arkansas. But these things take time. They just can't happen overnight. The SEC tries to manufacture them, but it just can't happen even over the span of just 10 years. So we'll see eventually. But Missouri fans know they left the Big 12. They ditched their rivalry with Kansas, although they're going to play here in basketball and football soon enough. But they have what they have, and this is it, basically.
Dave, before we let you go, like I told you at the beginning, I did go to Shakespeare's Pizza, really enjoyed my experience. The next time I'm in Columbia 2 years from now, assuming they don't play in KC, where should I go eat, in your opinion?
Oh, you got to go to Booch's downtown Columbia. You got to bring cash. It's a burger joint, but they don't take cards. There's nothing fancy there, but it's been there for over 100 years. Great place to go. CJ's if you need some wings, and you can never go wrong with Shakespeare's. But unfortunately for Sam, Chevys is gone, and it was I'm not even sure. I think a few restaurants have been there since. But great places downtown, you can't go wrong.
What was the name of the burger place?
Booch's.
Okay.
It's a billiard hall, and you can't miss it.
Great. I can't wait. Can't wait.
A
Dave.
Billiard hall. Yeah. I hadn't heard that term. And not a pool hall. It's a billiard hall. So. Much higher class establishment that way.
Dave Matters,
sure.
St. Louis Post-Dispatch, covers the Missouri Tigers there. Dave, we appreciate your time this morning going into a variety of topics, and hopefully we'll see a good game tomorrow against Missouri and Arkansas.
Great. Thanks, guys.